Go ahead. Okay. So we have this discharge. Yes, we are.
When we have a really bad shower, it's 6 or 7 years.
That's a bright green habitat. It's probably more than your truck.
It's going so fast.
My daughter lives in Nashville. Bill works at had a friend who had ponding there.
Yeah.
We're live this year.
Anyway, she got called out. Watch was not the watch was my wife said, "You take such a big what's the time? It was a tea.
Yeah, it's Philip. This is, I have another one, an older one. This is actually a pilot's watch.
Well, I'm going to talk about that tonight where you guys are buying stuff in town.
It wasn't that much because it was coming across, it was going down the road. It was going down.
Yeah, it's got a chronometer. It's got a computer on the outside.
Yes. I'm going to read about it. This is my 3 o'clock in the morning.
I'm going to get a huge copy of a World War II watch. This is only buying from the manufacturer.
This is probably 10 or 12.
It did take a while just to figure it out.
That's the
You can take your teeth and you can take your marks.
That's right. Who's those folks in the back?
No, he's a pretty close to very back?
Yeah.
I've never seen it. Never. We've got
most of the stuff done so far right now.
19th is still there.
Yep. Still good. It's looking like we're going to have
That's a good job.
I tell you, everybody, to me, I was proud of it. I mean, everybody played a good role. He kept us cool. I thought it was a productive meeting.
That's why I had it, so I was see how long it was taking to get the ground.
You can see how long you can breathe the water before you pass out. Okay.
I never needed one. It's pretty good.
I'm sorry I haven't made it back. I thought I did. The police department did a thorough investigation and concluded there was nothing wrong. Although I haven't got an answer back about why is there a power cable hanging out the back of the trailer. And the power cable. I haven't got an answer from the chief yet. I'll bring it up again.
And I've been the chapter treasurer for the chapter for the last 12 years or 14 years, and I couldn't find the checkbook for like 2 years. You know what I did the other day? I opened this little zipper portfolio I've got. I heard pocket inside. What's that? Open up. It's It's somewhere.
I got an insurance reporters that they collaborated on their notes.
But that Friday evening before.
So was Tim Martin. But she said she didn't say.
And it's 8 different stations for an hour and a half.
She said
And
it's
then at the end of that, I have a 50-mile victory lap. And then they had them all the way down. They put wet white towels on top of them. And they had to roll the guide on.
She was the one who asked to talk to her.
We're good. We'll do it Thursday. I need all of you to show up though.
You know what's interesting? I love this. He's very interesting. Anybody named Lee, you can't trust.
You give them a ticket for driving
I tried, man. I'm not sworn in, though. Fortunately, I was from City Hall, so I can walk. I don't have to worry about it. I can jaywalk, but
Yeah, thank you.
Well, when I saw you here, I expected that.
How about me? I can get a. Oh, those are his.
Oh, nice. You are my hero.
Yeah, I can't get out of it.
You are my hero.
Yeah. No choice whatsoever. No choice whatsoever.
What's happening?
Do we need to put the Swiss flag over there? Or is that
I'm doing good. How about yourself? It's getting warmer already. I'm not ready for summer.
That's what I didn't go out from after about 11. I was checking my phone about 4 and it's like 91 or 92. I'm like, wow, it's a whole different heat.
On my back porch right now. Thank you. I can smoke a cigar, but I'm just like smell like smoke.
Not just 3, but 4. I mean,
That's sweet.
Always. The mayor does that to me. I keep forgetting to bring it.
Screwdriver and all that stuff.
Well, if I can get a reminder, I got sticky notes all over and stuff in my car, but none of them have WD-40 on it.
so what is it outside of the nuclear bomb? WD-40 was like the biggest thing that came out of World War II, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, that was.
Hey, Mike, can we see?
Do you want to run this in When I bought the
opposite of wire.
The down arrow? Okay.
I've got to
No, you use years of movie too, John.
I have another one.
That's one look
You know,
to the
engineering degree. It
I don't know what he did with him. I
won't touch that. If it's a salve, I'll do everything. Or a barrel. I got some barrels over there. Castroville them over there.
I want to get all with a little bit. It's at 50, 150 pounds. Split it.
I like the gills.
I need better, man. I need a better binoculars.
Got awful quiet in here.
You
You got a list? Get the list?
yeah.
That was mayor code.
Thank you, sir.
Guess who?
Okay, we're going to call the April 9th, 2019 regular called City Council meeting to order at 6 p.m. Let the record reflect that everyone is present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Pastor, please stay standing for the invocation.
Let's pray. Gracious Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day and the wonderful rain you sent us, but especially this evening we ask that you bless this meeting tonight. Just that all that is done here tonight and is said is God-pleasing for the betterment of this wonderful community that we live in. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Okay, going on to item number 5, Mayor's comments on activities within the city. We have a report from the City Secretary's office, and the information she's given me is general election 2019, Saturday, May 4th, for the places of District 1 and the mayor. First day of early voting starts Monday, April 22nd, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., and that's right here at City Hall. Last day is Tuesday, April 30th. Late days are April 24th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and April 30th, 7 a to 7 p. The Steinbach House quarterly visitors count: January 141, February 202, in March we had 836. Priscilla Garrett reported from March 10th to April 5th, tours brought in $400 and donations totaled $652. Grand total of $1,052. Very good. We're noticing a lot of tours that are coming into the city. I don't know if anybody has noticed this week, we've had 4 different tours here. Priscilla guided 3 of them through the city, showing them. And we're becoming really popular destination place for people to come and enjoy our city. From Desmond at the library. The library now has 2 Oculus Go's virtual reality machines, whatever that is, to assist with Gamers Club and the young adult learning programs. They are very educational as they can take you on a virtual trips through the body or a safari, to name just a few of things it can do. Please take a look at our Rescuing Texas History link on the library's homepage. It's an excellent tribute to rich Alsatian history here in Castroville. And Desmond reports he's attempting to digitize our older newspapers. They're on microfilm through a grant offered by the University of North Texas. We also have Corporal Ashley Skolvik has got the Public Agency Training Council, has got a certificate from Mastering Leadership Skills and Officer Performance. Good job, Ashley. And from Devon at the Park, the replacing of the pool chairs, tables, along with new umbrellas. They're offering more shaded sitting areas, painting of the benches, and the pool. That's all we have. We have 27 French students in the city for, I think, until Tuesday, am I right? I think they leave next Tuesday. And last night we had them all at Fremdes. They're 14 years old. Just a delightful young group of French students. They all had to raise their own money to pay their way to come here. And they had host families throughout the city that housed them. And just a great bunch of folks. I know they've been around. What's that, Priscilla?
Can I say something about it?
Yeah.
One of their teachers who's with them, there's 3 teachers, is the daughter of the drivers who came for about 4 years to help us build Steinbach House.
Oh, really?
So that daughter has brought them back to see what her mom and dad helped us do.
Yeah, we have a real connection with our sister cities. I mean, they love coming here to Castroville. Good. Okay, moving on to item number 6, consent agenda. Have any changes? Could I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
I move we accept it as written.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Going to item number 7, citizens' comments. Mr. Lee is the only one that signed up. Mr. Lee?
Good evening, council, staff. My name is Bob Lee. I live at 1314 Gentiles here in Castroville. First, thanks again for serving. It's always a treat to see new people experience all the interesting perspectives you can get on things from this position that you probably don't have from any other in the city. We as citizens look to you guys as our board of directors for the company, and this is a company and you're the board. We expect you to put that level of effort into these positions. Without your direction to the city employees through the approved budget, ordinances, policies, and directives, the city comes to a standstill. So you're vital in the decisions you make and having the city function. So your votes make all that happen. Do you always agree on everything that happens up here? You probably do not, but it's good to have disagreement because that brings out all the different points of view people have that the other person may not have considered. So once that's happened and you've discussed all those things, 3 of you get to decide the direction the city goes. And that's the way this is set up, and I think it's been working pretty well. Just remember, we've got that lovely internet television over there now, and everybody in the city has the opportunity, like I do, when I leave here, to go back and watch how you guys conduct your business. So make sure we all stay proud of the work that you're doing up here for the city. Thanks again for serving. On the city lot at London and Geneva, everybody know where that is? It's London and Geneva, like you're going to go to the cemetery, not yourself, but for someone else. The city has created an eyesore there, a dump, if you will, on the large half-block lot that we have, and it's in a residential neighborhood. For about 15 years, as I go by this street on my way to the house most days, the place was cleaned up. There was just grass there. It wasn't a problem. But in the last 3 or 4 years, it basically has turned into a repository for public works material, trash, brush, old trees, contractors' operation, road machinery, and the like. It also happens to be how you get to the regional park for quite a few people and to the homes back down there. It would be nice if that was cleaned up, and if you need to have a place to put those kinds of things, we have a huge park down there that a portion could be taken care of that's not in a residential area and that didn't detract from places where people go out their front door and expect to have a nice looking place. I do have a tractor. If we can't get it taken care of soon, I have no problem with depositing a load of that material in front of City Hall or maybe next to your house. I really don't. And so it would be good if we made the residential area look like a residential area. So please take care of that as you can. I know you've got a street thing to finish right now. When that's done, it would be good if that could be taken care of. The budget's approaching. Please again consider an enclosed tractor, large shredder for that highway work. It'll save us a lot of time. It's better for the health of the employees, and we won't wear out all the zero-turn mowers that are not made for that kind of work. Meter reading, you've heard me before, it gets pretty nice out there at 95 degrees. You know, all those wonderful places in downtown San Antonio, you've got those little scooters to take people around 10, 15 miles at a charge. They're not very expensive. We ought to try a couple of those just to help out the person that does that reading. They'll do it a lot more quickly. They'll go right to the meter. Don't have to park and drive. And, you know, $1,000 or less, we can get a couple of these and give it a try. Planning and permitting, working with developers. Imagine you're going to the doctor's office, DMV, tax office, so forth, and you find the doors open, but there's nobody there to work your issues. I kind of see that as our situation with developers and citizens now coming to Castroville to do business with us. The doors are open, but no one can give the customers all the help that they need in a timely manner.
Mr. Lee, your time is up.
Okay. I appreciate that. As you work that issue tonight, consider taking some action to help that out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 8. Lee?
Thank you, Mayor. Before I introduce our new interim Public Works Director, Roy, if I could have you stand up real quickly. Over the last month, Roy has handled 2 different positions, pretty much a Public Works Superintendent and helped me out as the interim Public Works Director. At this moment, I would just like to say thanks to him for all of his help that he's done. He's helped with morale with our Department of Public Works staff. And as an interim city administrator, I greatly appreciate what you've done, Roy. So thank you for what you've done. And that kind of segues into our interim Public Works Director. There's been a lot of discussion whether you wanted the interim city administrator or the permanent administrator to hire this very important position. And so one thing I was able to do, very fortunate, was to find an individual that has a lot of administrative and technical public works background, fortunately, to help fill our interim public works position. And this also allowed Roy to be able to go back and be able to handle the crews and some different things while we handle some major issues. And at this moment, I would like Mr. John Gomez, if you would stand up, please. Very fortunate to have John on board. Reached out to him. We were able to come up with a game plan how we're going to do this and help bridge with the permanent administrator coming on board and beginning to look at a lot of areas in public works. John has a background of 19 years at the San Antonio River Authority. Has a lot of wastewater background. Currently, a lot of our areas that we're dealing with are wastewater. And so having John on board, has a industrial engineering degree from Tarleton State. And so to have someone with 20 plus years of experience in this and comes with very great credentials, I'm very pleased to have John on board. He's done a great job. This is the beginning of his 2nd week. He's reached out to staff. He's helping us with our wastewater treatment plant operations, helping us with the RAM 2 streets in a lot of different areas. And very pleased with the work so far. And thanks for coming on board, John.
Thank you, John. We appreciate having you here. And next.
What I'm going to do with our animal control position, I've asked the interim police chief Jackson to actually introduce our new
Okay, Brian.
This is Robert Blue Haywood. He worked for Castroville for 9 years in the gas department, so a lot of the citizens here know him, and I've gotten a lot of phone calls thanking us for hiring him back because they really like this guy. He worked for Hondo Animal Control for a while, and we stole him from Somerset. And he's been doing a great job since he got here. He hit the ground running. He's been pretty much plug and play. Guy knows his job, and we appreciate him.
Thank you, Blue. It's good to have you back here.
Yeah, the new truck we have right now is wanting to get into a contest on putting in decals and stuff on it for the citizens to put their input on the truck. It basically is their truck. So
Okay.
if the council allow us to have a contest and let everybody put their input on that truck, and then we'll pick 10 individuals, bring it back to you guys, and let y'all decide on the final contest, and we'll fit the truck out that way.
Real good.
But just let the citizens have a say on how that truck is dressed.
Thank you. Very good. Thank you. That's cool. All right, moving on to item number 9, update and appropriate action on water looping modeling planning. Mike? I guess we're going to use, so we can kill the lights up here.
I'm going to try to do it from here. We'll see how this works out. I may move.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thanks for the opportunity to come back and visit with you all. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some efforts we've been working on the east side of the city's water system. And this is intended, this is conversational. This is not for action or for, it's more for your information on what we understand the situation to be and what some of the potential solutions are and some next steps that we might consider. So some background about the city, right? So just in general, the city, there's 3 water systems that the city owns. I think some of you might have seen this before, but the big one is obviously the main part of the old part of the city. There's a small system out at the airport, and then there's what we call the Medina Valley system over there by Deer Valley and Victory Lane, and they're completely separate right now. So that has impacts on the city in terms of those 3 public water systems to maintain with the TCQ. There are some pressure and flow limitations in the system because of the way the piping is configured. There's limited redundancy. For instance, the Medina Valley system has just 1 well, 1 ground storage tank, 2 small pumps or 3 small pumps. So if anything breaks, right, it's a much harder system to continue to provide water. And this is also, the east side of the city is the largest area of potential growth. Like there's a lot of new things that are wanting to come out there, in addition to the lack of pressure and flow for existing customers. So the purpose of the study was really to look at ways we could improve the reliability of the city's system on the east side of the river, establish the city's requirements for new infrastructure so that as new developers come in, they know what they're expected to build and the city doesn't get 10 new small water systems to provide the service out there. And also really to try and establish a roadmap to really kind of help the city get pointed in the right direction, right? I'm going to show you some things in a minute about like ultimately what it might look like when it's in 20 years or whatever the build out period is of the city. But what you want to do is you want to kind of get head in the right direction. You can't just go in and put in this giant infrastructure today, neither from a financial standpoint or just from an operations standpoint, but you want to get head in the right direction and have some thoughts about how things are going to develop and how they're going to grow so that when people come in, you're kind of starting to complete pieces of the overall puzzle. So some of the key things we looked at as part of this effort, right? The TCQ sets a lot of criteria for minimum storage, minimum well capacities, minimum pump capacities. We look at pipe sizing to make sure we can move the water around. And we use what we call a living unit equivalent. Here in Castroville it's called that. Some other places might call it equivalent dwelling unit, but it sort of stands for your average water meter. And what's important as part of this is the TCQ doesn't give you any requirements on fire flow, but the city ordinance requires fire flow, and so there are requirements on that's a lot more water that has to be considered. Where does it come from? How do you move it through the pipes? And that was also factored into the analysis as we get into it. So going back again, I hope you can see it all. This is an excerpt from a draft tech memo we'd prepared, but the city system, again, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, the main city system with all the orange and red piping. That's all the existing piping network, and it's mostly 6-inch and 8-inch water mains. And then you can see as you cross the river, there's a lot less piping. There's a little bit going through Country Village and down Old Highway 90. And then there's a single 10-inch line that runs out east to the dealership, the Chevrolet dealership out there. And you have the airport system kind of off by itself on the airport property. And you have the Medina Valley system to the very end there by Victory Lane. And so what I think is important here is everything's in compliance with the TCQ in terms of you have all the right storage capacities and you have them there. What you don't have is it's sort of not in the right spot. right? You have Cross Hill tank is 500,000 gallons, which is a lot of storage, but there's not really a way to get that water easily to the east side of the river. You know, we know when Walmart has a fire storage tank, when they open up their piping, right, we see a lot of head loss through the system, so we see pressures drop on that side of the system. And again, it's not just a matter of mathematically I have 10 people, so that means I need 20 gallons and I'm good. It has to be in the right spot to service them. Again, it's important to note, right, there's no redundancy. The airport system's not connected to the Medina Valley system. Medina Valley is not currently connected to the city system, so there's not a lot of way to really move some of the water around. Like, so for instance, the airport well is a really productive well. We believe the Medina Valley well is really productive, but they're not connected to anything, so there's not a way to push that water back to the west currently. So it's important to note the existing infrastructure. We understand there's just 2 crossings of the Medina River, and so that really limits the amount of water that can be moved to the east, or conversely in the future to be moved from the east back to the west. And what we're talking about is when you get into the future, when you're thinking about if we take Cross Hill tank down for maintenance, if another well, you have a power outage or a lightning strike or a motor burns up and you lose a well and it takes a week or something to repair things, you want to be able to move water around so you can maintain service without putting everybody on water restrictions and that kind of thing, right? Just get a really robust system that can kind of handle what comes at it. So this is a little boring, but just for those that like numbers, right? In a nutshell, right, we're talking about what does the system have, and does it have what it needs? Like I said, again, it works for the current number of connections in total. Where it starts to fall down a little bit is where the things are, where the wells are on the west side of the river, where the storage is on the west side of the river. When you get into like the Medina Valley system or the airport system, you really don't have fire flow in terms of storage, actual water that's there, pumped out of the ground and ready to be used if there was some event. So that's some of those things that are in the system right today. So what we did is we were really looking at that area east of the river. We weren't looking at the entire city. We were just trying to look at what's out there on the east side of the river where there's been pressure problems and flow problems. It's roughly 6,000 acres, and that kind of covers everything outside the floodplain and not that short piece that's up at the north end that's served by Yancey Water up off 471 North. We looked at the medium density growth. This is based on, so if you go back to the comp plan that was back in 2016, there was a number of growth scenarios in there. Meeting with city staff, it was agreed we'd utilize the medium density growth as a barometer in terms of the projections here, because everything's kind of based on the number of connections you're going to have. And I would say that growth thing, or the growth projections, right, it depends on what kind of development occurs, right? You have really large lot developments to you have commercial developments where you're going to get a lot more water demand in a smaller area. And so the medium density is an initial striking the balance, but this is something that's going to have to be revisited as the community grows, right? These things are assumptions, right? They're in order to come up with numbers, but it can vary. And this one, I always show this just because I think it's interesting, and it's important to kind of keep it in mind. So the purple line at the bottom of the page literally takes the number of connections or number of the population in 2019 or 2020 and just forecasted the comp plan annual growth rate was something like 1.24%, so very low growth rate. Then I made up a number and I picked that orange or red line. That's a 4% average annual growth rate. And then the blue line is more of, there's been a number of folks that approached the city over the past few years and said they were thinking about a development here, a development there, and they're talking about, none of that's committed, but it's like ideas that people have had. And so it shows, and the way we did that is, I think it's at a higher end. I don't think it's super realistic, but I wanted to show it. It's sort of, if someone came in and they said, hey, I want to put in 100 lots on this piece of property, and they said, I think I want to start in 2025 or 2022. Well, 100 lots, you might have picked 20 lots a year as a. They don't have a takedown schedule, so we made a guess that they started in 2022 and it was 20 lots a year, and you kind of did that for each one of them, and that's what the map looks like. So it looks it ends up being like an 18 or 20% growth rate. I think that's excessive. What I would imagine we would see more, and I don't know if I have a laser on here, Deborah. What I think in reality, what you'll probably see is you'll see as things progress and the market sort of figures out what it's going to do. Yeah, perfect. So what you might see is that you might see maybe some steep periods and then things level off, and some steep periods and things level off. I think this was, it's useful for sort of bracketing the really slow growth rate, kind of what's been going on for the past 20, 30 years at the bottom end, and then what if things took off at the other end. So it's useful as a bracket, not necessarily saying it's going to be exactly this or exactly that. And I might go back one. Let's see if I can go back. Deborah, can I go back one? And I want to point out, this is sort of the entire, this is all lumped together, the city entire lumped together. If you actually looked at like the east side over there with what's east of the river, it's a much lower number, right? We have basically Country Village, a small number of commercial establishments, and the Deer Valley system, so you're much lower down here, right? So, to point that out so you're aware. There we go, I'm back on it now. Okay, so this ultimate conditions, I want to be real clear, this is based on these assumptions about if this grows, and these are full of rooftops or commercial or retail, whatever it is. At that medium density, there's a lot of demand out there. There's a lot of new customers out there. How does the city service that area in terms of potable water and fire protection? How might that look? And so we're sort of super early in the game here. We actually took the major thoroughfare, and I want to apologize in advance for the piping configuration. It's strictly based on the major thoroughfares that were in the comp plan, and those are based on just what I think it was a UTSA had come up with. This is how you might move these number of people around. So that's all that's based on. They're not saying the pipe goes exactly there. We did look at, so this shows you, if you remember earlier, we had talked about the airport system and then the Medina Valley system being there. We've said, that one of the concept would be you have a lot of water there. It's an existing well. Upgrade it to put a new booster pump station in there. Take the Medina Valley system and upgrade it, put a booster pump station in there as well. And then somewhere in this part of the city, we put an elevated storage tank in over here on the east side. It doesn't have to be exactly there, but that's a spot this is all very flat land. We're kind of gaining elevation as we get here. And then this far northeast corner is really too high to be served off the existing pressure plane, and so it's proposed as a separate northeast pressure plane. And I didn't mention earlier, but I should. We've envisioned this being on the same pressure plane as the existing city system. So it's a little easier to maintain. It's much easier in the future to move water around and for pressures to be more constant rather than having additional booster stations and existing ways to move water around that require a lot of complicated valving. And I think so, just to be clear, the locations are approximate, right? The gridding is important, right? As we think about things happening, the gridding is really important, but the exact precise location is less relevant, right? If something moves over 100 feet or 200 feet, we're not thinking about it like that. Someday in the future, when things really get going, maybe we think about, does this become one road, and is that those two 12-inch pipes, should they be a little bit larger because there's just one? That kind of stuff occurs as you get more of the weeds and more advanced development considerations. So when we do that, we do the math based on that medium density growth rate and the number of acres, we get something like 8,900 total connections potential out there, and that's based on that growth rate. Could actually be more, could be a little less, depending on what kind of developments come in, what the city allows and approves, that kind of thing. And so what you see, the big one to kind of key on is the Northeast we didn't spend a lot of time on, and it's almost because it's so far remote from the rest of the city, it's really out there. The central one is kind of right along Highway 90, 471, all the easily accessible land currently. And you can see someday it's quite a bit of well capacity, quite a bit of total storage and elevated storage requirements. And so this is sort of, again, going back to on a spreadsheet, this is the total amount you need. There's lots of different ways to put this together, and that's the part that comes in. You can't really say today this is exactly the best way to do it, because there's a lot of factors that could come into different ways to approach it. I'll show you a little bit of a way we kind of thought about it, but it's not set in stone. So again, another graph, just again pointing out again, based on those potential different growth rates, you can kind of see the total storage requirement from the TCQ and how it can kind of vary in the years depending on where you are and what growth curve you're on. And like I said, again, you'll probably, some year you're going to build a storage tank and you're going to be way up here with your capacity, and you're going to be fine for a while, and then you're going to have to add more storage capacity as time goes on. Similar chart for the water wells. It's interesting to note right here, you can see here's the existing pump in the Medina Valley well, and you can see it's it can only service about 250 connections, and it won't be in compliance with the TCQ. Here you can see if we put the 2 wells in the city and combine them with an upgraded well at Medina Valley, now we're up at 2,100 gallons per minute capacity, and so we can service quite a bit longer in terms of TCQ capacity. And again, I go back to, it matters where the wells are, it matters where the pump stations are. So these are useful, but they're not the answer in and of themselves, right? These kind of analyses. And the pumping situation similarly, right? Showing as time goes on how pumping rates will need to increase. So when I come to here, sort of some initial steps, right? Some initial thoughts, I guess you might say. We know we have some opportunities with the existing Medina Valley well and existing airport wells. They have good water capacity. There's some land at some not some at some others. But if we were to, and so when I say we, I mean we as a community, not necessarily we specifically who's going to spend the money on these things. These are more ideas right now, just so you're aware of kind of how to think about these things, or how we've been thinking about them. If the city was to make improvements or allow improvements at the Medina Valley system, you'd be able to service a lot of that area around there, and you could also push water back towards the west, right? So that right now we have that, we talked about those 2 short straws across the Medina River, and we have pressure and flow issues in kind of Country Village area, Walmart area. Well, now by upgrading this, the Medina Valley well and connecting back into the city system, we can now affect some of that. We can push that hydraulic grade line back towards the river. And so we kind of improve pressure and flow in all that existing part of the city area by pushing back through that 10-inch line over there. Someday, it'd be nice to connect the airport system into the Medina Valley and city system, because then we'd have that, we'd be able to take advantage of that water capacity there, and in case if a well went down, motors burn out, they get struck by lightning, you now have a way to move water back towards the city, again, as a way to do that. And I would say I'll tell you how I got to these numbers. These really fire flow kind of drives these requirements, right? If we expect the city's ordinances require pretty high fire flows for heavy commercial areas or retail areas, so that larger storage capacity and that larger flow rate is to allow the ability to meet max day demands in the system and provide fire flow capacity. That's why they might look a little big, but it's because of that fire capacity and the future growth. And those are sort of scalable, right? So I say it's expandable. You could also start at a lower number. You just would have a problem. Like, let's say you had 500 connections and a fire. If you put the pumps too small, you might lose your water for the people that are using their day-to-day, and all the water is dedicated to the fire event. So it's a little more pumping capacity is pretty inexpensive when you're building the rest of the facility. And then someday, a new elevated storage tank and well somewhere in the city. And that's sort of a logical approach. You could also turn it on its ear and you could build an elevated storage tank first. Right, there's not, like I said earlier, there's some elevated storage is a lot more expensive than a ground storage tank, but it can be done. There's not necessarily we're sort of in an abstract, right? We're not putting dollar values to these at this moment. These are sort of the ideas and sort of a logical approach, but you could do different things depending on what opportunities presented themselves to the city. And I should mention, we did try to look, it wasn't really what we had intended to look at, but we tried to look at, could we, while we're making these improvements to the city, can we get water back to the west side of the river? Right now, we don't have well number 1. What if something, like Cross Hill Tank at some point is going to need to be taken down for maintenance? What if something happens to a well 2 or well 3? So we looked, what we found is we really need a pretty sizable pipe even to get from like a new elevated tank or from the new tank at the Medina Valley system. We need a really large pipe, maybe 16-inch diameter, all the way back to the river. And even then it sort of falls apart there because we have those 2 small straws across the river, and once we get across the river, we don't have like a great set of piping to take us all the way back to Cross Hill Tank. We don't have good transmission in the main city system, so that really needs some more effort to really come up with what's the most cost-effective way, if that was something the city really wanted to consider. Finally, just some next steps, right? So I mentioned, if you wanted to figure out, would it be worth it is it better for us to build piping from the west side or from the east side back to the west, so we can, if something happened to a well or Cross Hill, we could push water west? Or would it be better for us to add another well or another storage tank on the west side of the river that takes a little bit of effort to kind of come up with options and what would be the most cost effective for the city, and what kind of, each one's going to have benefits and costs outside of its actual dollar value impact. I think the city should look at establishing a trigger point for replacing well number 1. Right now, we have roughly 1,200 gallons a minute capacity, and that works out good. But if something was to happen to one of the wells, it puts the city in a bind. So obviously, the more robust the system, the easier it is to breathe easy, knowing because stuff does happen with mechanical equipment. And then I would encourage you, right, this is, it needs to be revisited as things happen out in the development, right? There's going to be someone's going to come in, and it's not going to be exactly the way that it was lined up. And so when they come in and they want to, you tell them, okay, this is what we need to service the site, they might have a different idea, because maybe they're not right next to that pump station, so they want to propose another idea. So that you go back and revisit it and see, okay, how does this fit into our ultimate plans for how we want to operate the system, and how do we make this a good part of the system ultimately, rather than some kind of a throwaway piece or something that's another burden on operators. And that's the I went through it pretty fast. I'm happy to entertain questions if you want. Again, this was a conversation and not anything for action.
I understand. So we've talked about the Medina Valley well, and we've talked about booster pumps, we've talked about boring under Highway 90 and connecting to Loop It. And it was my understanding that that would give redundancy to Country Village and that area of town, the city, but I never really thought it would give much benefit, and neither did you, as far as pushing back across the river. My question is, I still go back to this, that when well number 1 went down, the people that noticed that well having the sulfur were the people in Country Village. So we were pushing water to Country Village. What stops it from going back across the river? That's what I don't understand. If you're
well,
there's got to be some benefit to that.
There may well be, and we didn't see no benefit. We just didn't see a really sizable. We were talking, water. Again, so I'll back up a step. Right, a water model is as close as you can get to a representation of what's really going on, but it's hard to get them to be really robust. It takes a lot of field effort to really get them lined up, and we built off of the model the city paid for years ago. We didn't go recreate a model. We tried to take advantage of what was there. Okay. I think there are some holes in it.
Okay, I'm with you. I'm with you about that part. But there was a benefit to doing the looping and upgrading the well.
Yeah.
We need to take care of the people that are in the city. That's our first concern. The development that's happening out there, they're going to have to pay their way to have water service or fire service, but they need to know what they need to participate in. So can you give us a little bit of a scenario as far as what we tell them, what they need to build?
Yes, I think we could. So right, when you have we have this concept and what it would need. Like I think we're close right here. What I would say, what you would want is, right, we'd sit down and visit with staff a little bit further, just to kind of work our way through some of, like I showed some storage tank sizes and some pump station sizes there, and they're subjective in the sense that they're based on, well, what do you want it to do, right? If I said 300,000 gallons of storage and 3,000 to 4,000 gallons a minute, that has a finite capacity, right? It can treat a set amount of connections, and so there's a little bit of thought process. Will do want it to just do 500 connections or 1,000 connections, or at what point does the city want to have that facility upgraded? Right? There's certain there's a benefit to everything costs money, but there's a certain benefit to doing a little bit more initially than trying to chip away at it. Right? Make it as minimum possible and then come back and try to upgrade it. But we do envision it being scalable. You would put in several thousand gallons a minute of pumps capacity now with a spare slot for another pump in 5 years or 7 years or whenever the growth requires an additional pump out there. But then at that point you could allow you talk to the developer and say, okay, to service that area, we're envisioning this size of facility. We need this size of facility, and that would allow them to then go do their math, right, to see what that cost would be and whether they want to take that down or not.
Do you still recommend that we do the looping and the upgrading of the pump at Medina Valley?
I think, Mayor, what I would recommend, given the amount of interest in that part of the city and the small size of it, I think it would be better, rather than trying to upgrade that little bitty booster pump station with its electrical problems and its other controls issues, to build a new pump station and a larger storage tank. It may not be as big as what I envisioned. Maybe that's a bigger dollar value than the city wants to think about.
At that location?
I think in that part of the world makes sense. There's a really good well there, so we're going to try to do a pump test on it to verify, but we feel pretty confident it's a really good well there based on the available data. So you'd want to stay reasonably close to that area. You don't have to be right on site, but you'd want to be pretty close so you could pipe from the well to the ground storage tank.
Okay.
I thought we needed to do looping to help Maxwell, help the dock dealership out, because they don't have enough water.
That's a piece of it. Councilman Sherrod, this piece right here would improve, this piece right here that's shown, this 12-inch piece is to improve, because right now that facility is on a long dead-end U.
That would take care of it?
That would help, right? So that would help with flow and pressure. The bigger piece, so sometimes, like I said, it all has to kind of work together, right? So you have, mathematically, I can get water out of this, out of the existing pumps, down Victory Lane over 471 and back up through that property.
Bendeley property? Do they have a well?
I think there's a Bentley property over here, maybe, that the city owns now. I was told recently there's a well. I don't know anything about it, though. So we don't have any details on it. But you could do it. So those pumps will do, I forget the numbers, but it'll do, let's say it's 1,000 gallons a minute, and their fire protection requirements are they need 1,000 gallons a minute at more than 20 psi or whatever. And so mathematically it gets there where the system, that system falls down is the storage capacity is really limited. So if you only have 50,000 gallons, you can provide fire flow for a few minutes, and then you don't have any more water. The tank has gone dry, and so you don't have the ability to provide fire flow. And there's no other system. There's no other system connectivity where you could introduce additional water into the system based on the current configuration. And like I mentioned, there's a little flexibility here, so you could, if you were really determined, you could upgrade the airport well and drag like a mile of pipe over there, and that would help, but then you'd have to improve some piping over here. So there's lots of different ways to approach it, but we thought the looping across Highway 90 here, finishing the U would be the lowest, yeah, the best and the least cost, because this other option, you'd have to upgrade all of that old pipe that was laid 15 years ago now, or 20, whatever it was. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Everybody's heard the rumors about the development by Walmart. So where's Walmart up here?
Walmart is right here.
All right, so even though the mayor says, will this help, we all are pretty sure we're going to get what the rumor is, up to 600 homes or something like that. And plus the decal line would be developed, and we're not real sure if that's going to be residential or commercial or whatever. So in reality, if this stuff wasn't developed, we wouldn't need this. Because you just said, or the mayor just said, it's not going to, it helps with pushing up the hill, but that wasn't the importance of this looping. I'm not arguing with anything, but I just, the LUI or the LUE, the city decides that, or that is, what if we reduced it? I just, are you talking to developers or contractors for that?
So the LUE is a way to think about development. It's a way to kind of normalize the numbers so you can put metrics to it, right? So
that affects this?
Unless a living unit equivalent has a definition, right? One 5/8" water meter is assumed to have, let's say, 240 gallons per day demand, and there's a peaking factor. And so 240 is a San Antonio number. The city's used a slightly different number, but it's varied a little bit, and it's been more focused on the wastewater, so I'm kind of just throwing that one as a number. And there's a peaking factor applied to it to get to peak hour demand. So, and we use those because that helps us size infrastructure. And we try to be a little conservative so that we don't cut it too close to the bone, because sometimes people use more water than we think, and sometimes use less, right? So that's strictly based on one LUE requires this much infrastructure.
So if we have 900 houses and you average 2.5 a house?
Something like that. So it would be, the LUE would be, one house is one LUE, right? Oh. And the total number of LUEs is based on the city's policies. Does the city allow this type of growth Or does the city require everybody to do 12,000 square foot lots and they take out the PUD part of the ordinance, or do you leave it in? And that's like I mentioned earlier, I was giving you sort of a range, right? You continue on the current path of really minimal 1.25% growth, or what if you allow larger, more dense development, then you might see it at the upper end.
The high part.
Right, and so what we're doing here is we took a medium density, not too strong one way or the other, but just sort of medium. And like I said, again, it's important to come back and revisit this. You do the first facility and you kind of watch as development occurs, and you come back and revisit it to see what additional storage, or it's not just storage, but storage, wells, pumping. And I would say, as far as does the city need to do it or not do it, there's always the benefit of the redundancy and looping the system. It's really hard for the system operators when, like Medina Valley Well's gone down a number of times, not the well itself, but the pump station goes down, and then the operators are in there on the weekends or at night trying to get it back up and running, and it's usually because maybe the electrical service or a component broke or something. Mechanical equipment breaks, and so you always want to try and improve the robustness of the system. Now you can do it two ways. You can have the city can pay for infrastructure and or the city can say, okay, this is the lines on the paper, so Mr. Developer, when you come in on your frontage, we need you to put in a 12-inch line on your frontage of your property so that they're building the piece. And that's a normal development approach, is the developers build their share of the infrastructure that their property is on.
Okay, and one more question. I just was involved in an issue with the new assisted living facility up on the hill where we know we never get pressure. And I know Hillside has a different, what is the required pressure for just a normal hydrant? Not the fire suppression, but just a normal hydrant. Does the city have a normal pressure they provide?
The TCQ really sets the minimums, and the TCQ says you have to provide 35 PSI at the connection to the customer.
Fire suppression would be what?
Fire suppression, if I'm not mistaken, is a 20 PSI requirement.
So what happened with that was, and it's been rectified, I think, they called me because it's in my district, but it seems that the permits and all that were done through the city.
We need to stay on the subject.
Well, I'm just asking about the pressure. And so when they tested it for fire suppression, it didn't have the right pressure. And that's because it's up the hill, like you were talking, pushing it. And so that won't affect anything with the problems you already have over there.
It would not. That is a separate pressure plane, as I understand it. I know a little bit about that facility's pressure issues just from last week, but that is a separate pressure plane that's distinct from the rest of the main city pressure plane.
The rest of us are safe from fire suppression. All our hydrants are good in the city for fire suppression.
I couldn't tell you if what the hydrants will do. Ms. Sandler, you have a good amount of storage and a good amount of piping capacity, but I couldn't tell you if your specific hydrant, how much water will pull out of that any one hydrant. That's not something I know.
All right, I'm concerned about that. I'm concerned about the growth, and this is important. We need to do it, but I just think we need some more information. I like what you've done, but it's just like, we're throwing up 900 homes or no homes, or just a car dealership. It really scares me. It concerns me. The money.
Yeah,
as far as the water looping, I don't think that we can build for the developer. They're going to have to provide that for us, but we can tell them what they have to provide for infrastructure to support their development. I don't want to get into planning for them.
No, I agree with you, but we have to have this.
Okay, so this is my understanding going way back. I mean, nothing has changed. These are conversations we had. You were in the meeting for the Dodge dealership out there. They put money up to run the pipe from the Medina Valley system to their place. We were going to get some benefit by getting participation in the piping. We talked about upgrading that well and looping it to give it some redundancy. I think that's something we can do that benefits the city, and they're paying their share of it. And the question was, if we do this, is this wasting money? Is this something that can't be used later on? And you told me, no, this all beefs up our system and makes it better. We get more pressure back to Country Village, Walmart area, all of that. So that's a project that we can do as a city with the existing funds that we have available for that. There's no way that we could model for these subdivisions that are supposedly coming or in the process, but we can tell them, the ones that are planning, we can tell them, this is what you need to give us. And I think that's what they're asking for, the ones that come. They want to know what they need to improve, to get their needs. The smaller ones. I'm not talking about the monsters out there. I'm talking about the smaller ones, the 20-acre, the 30-acre, 60-acre, stuff like that.
Not Alsatian Oaks. Huh? Not Alsatian Oaks.
They're going to have to provide. Alsatian Oaks is going to be storage wells that they're going to be building themselves. I mean, they're going to have to, and they know that.
Yeah, so to your point, Mayor, I guess, so yeah, you're right. So if we upgraded the well with a new well pump and upgraded the electrical to service that well pump, and we did the loop, that would not...
It needs work.
That would not be throwaway. The part that might be a little throwaway is if we added one more booster pump in that there's a spare slot. If we put, it's not a lot of money, but that part would be, because you can only get a little, like, I don't remember, like 1,200 or 1,300 gallons, whatever the number is, out of that pump station, and then you're sort of maxed out. So that's where I'm recommending you should think about a bigger pump station. But that's fairly small. The well upgrade and the loop would not be throwaway. That would be permanent infrastructure. It would fit the overall plan for the area. And to your point about, so the reason where this is valuable, right, is if someone comes into the city and they're right here, let's say they pick this and they want to put in, whether it's 10 lots or
the worst you possibly
whatever they can. So what happens is you tell them, okay, look, we don't have water there now. The closest water source is here, but it doesn't have a ground storage tank. It doesn't have booster pumps. There's not an easy way to get it from where it is to where you are. And so that becomes a conversation. Does that developer decide, I don't want to spend that money today? Or does that developer decide, okay, I have bigger plans than just this one piece, or I have 3 friends that have bigger plans than this one piece, and they create a participation agreement, and they come to the city and say, hey, okay, we want to build that facility and dedicate it to the city, and that becomes the conversation. Some things will happen where someone will want to develop, and the city says, this is what we need over there because we don't have water capacity, and someone may say, okay, I'm not going to do it. And that's sort of a decision the city reaches from a policy direction. Do you say, okay, we'll do it for you, and you pay us back, or do you say, okay, then that's the decision. That's a conversation each time.
So it's really 2 different issues from what I can see. For the current needs of the city, if we upgrade that well and we do the looping, meaning boring under the highway, tying that in so it's looped and it's not a dead-end line, it benefits Country Village in that area. But going back to well number 1 that's closed, is it more financially responsible to just go ahead and drill another well there? Because we need something on this side of the river, you're telling me. Do we have enough redundancy in what we have, or do we not?
So I bring it up, I think we're getting closer to, we're not like where we're out of water, and nothing like that. It's just we're getting closer to the TCQ required minimums, and things do happen to water systems all the time. Wells burn out. They seldom do it at a convenient time or a convenient time of year. And lightning strikes. Okay, so we didn't have a storage tank there. We just had a well. Is it feasible to drill another well at the same site and put a pump on it? What's the cost for something like that? It depends on what you wanted to do, Mayor. If you were looking for a smaller well, or you're looking for a well that would end all wells, and give me a range. I think you've got 3-phase power. I would say you're down at 300 or so on the small end for not too big a hole, and you could spend. There's municipal wells that go in with 30-inch open holes, and they're over $1.5 million. So it just depends on how much water you want out of it, and what kind of pipe you have to put into it once you pull that water out. What did we have there? Was it 8, 10? It wasn't real big. It was a medium size.
Well, y'all said it was 12 inch at one time.
But then it had been sleeved. Roy, what size was it?
It's about 9 inches.
9 inch?
9 inch hole?
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons we couldn't do
advanced repairs that well.
Okay. So if we put in a 10, like you said, a 10-inch, you're talking 300,000. We get something better than what we had.
Ish. Like
Ish.
So I'm a crawfish.
I
I
mean,
just
it's
say
okay.
don't hold my feet to the fire. It's going to be
No,
expensive,
no.
but it's in that $300,000, $400,000 you could
that's-
expect. I think you'd be really close to something to replace it.
But an
That's-
option would be a storage tank, no?
No.
Well, you have to get the water somewhere.
You got to get water.
From somewhere.
We're talking about wells go down.
But I guess
Yeah, but you got a storage tank. How
That's
much water is that gonna hold?
Not enough.
I think so, and this is sort of like it gets into like you're getting into the inner workings of the system in terms of how do you want the system to operate? How much belt and suspenders do you want? You know, how much? So it's worth it. It's a good conversation. It's like in a few years you're going to have to take. I don't know if it's in 5 years, but in a few years you're going to have to take Cross Hill Tank down to rehab it, and when you do that, you'll just have the two wells providing. So they'll be pumping all the time to keep up with demand, and you just don't have the flexibility that you'd like to have, so that you can breathe a little easier. Because sometimes bad things happen when you don't want them to, right? That's Murphy's law. So additional wells, or if you had more storage, it would give you a little more buffer capacity, but it would have to be someplace up high, so you would have to pump it again.
Yes, Paul. I'm sorry.
We have on the north side of the highway there, that 10-inch line that runs all the way out to the dealership, correct? That's not very far from the Medina Valley system, or, well, it's a little bit longer from the airport. But if those systems, all it would take is a connection across Highway 90 to bring those systems onto the same water capacity, or onto the same system. And what you would have is the ability, as you were talking about, of pumping back into the city, even if it was at a slow rate. I mean, those pumps would be, if we were supplementing one of the two wells, if one of the two wells in the city was down, we would be able to pump back into the storage tank.
Yeah, I think it should, like, to be clear, the 10-inch line is not very big, right?
No, it's not, no.
And so there's a considerable distance, so what we're seeing is a lot of head loss.
Right.
So we're not actually moving that much water through it with the 10-inch. Now, if you were to upgrade that to, that's the part I think you'd want to dive in harder, because it was like, if we ran a 16-inch line from here to here.
We just ran that 10-inch line.
So like the 10-inch, like what we're seeing is like if we just use it, if we try to put all that water in a 10-inch line, like let's say, because we actually ran some scenarios, we took the wells offline, we were moving like 50 or 60 gallons a minute through there. It's like, those wells are doing...
The pumps would have to run all night in order to supplement the supply.
Yeah, and I don't think there would, to be honest, if there was no wells here and you were trying to push water from here, I don't think you'd get water to Cross Hill Tank.
You wouldn't get anything up to the tank.
You don't have enough head to get there, right?
Okay, so essentially we would need some sort of not just pressure pumps, but a significant supply on the east side of the river in order to have adequate fire suppression supplies or any other, because right now we don't have any, at that end of town, so.
I don't even know if we have it in town, because he wasn't able to answer.
So, thank you.
I have two questions. Why can't we build a contingency plan to build a replacement well for well 1, so we have it on the shelf? And the second half of that question is, why does it have to go in the same place? Why couldn't it go over in Country Village?
You can't get it across the river.
You said you got 2 pipes going across the river.
It's not enough.
There's straws, he says.
Yeah, so I guess...
That's why we got to have something on this side.
Are they buried under the river? Or are they...
They're buried under the river. I believe both of them are. So I would say the well number 1 doesn't have to go back right where it was. We do know the piping configuration there worked, right, in terms of getting water into Cross Hill Tank. And we know that worked. It was set up to work that way, and it's been working well for a long time. You could put the well somewhere else. You just have to think about, again, it would help because it'd be closer, but we might need to run a dedicated pipe from that well and a new crossing of the river, because they're just like 8-inch crossings across the river, and they don't, it sounds big, it's really not a very big pipe for the amount of people and demand that's coming off. That's really not that's the kind of pipe that runs through through their city street, right? It's not this kind of thing that moves a lot of water from point A to point B, but it could be moved.
2 8-inch pipes? Is that what you said?
Mm-hmm. That's what we understand there to be there, right?
Can I? I'm sorry.
That's all
Okay.
I think we need a city workshop on this, because it's too much.
That's what we're doing.
Well, this isn't listed as a workshop, it's an update.
Well, it sounds like the looping plan is something we really need to do. If he's saying we're not throwing bad money there.
No, and the intent out of this not exercise, but out of this effort, when we finish it, we put together a list of these projects. We put a price tag on them so that they can be fed into the financial plan, and they feed both in terms of whether the city builds them 10 years from now, or the impact fees are made sure they're accounted for. And some of these things were in the impact fee update that was done a couple years ago, some of them aren't, and so the next round of impact fee updates to make sure that it's captured and it's charged appropriately to be recouped.
We already have a priorities list. I mean, we've already talked about looping the Medina Valley system over there. Somehow or another, getting the airport pump or well integrated into the system. Those would be high on the priority list, I would assume. And then, of course, I think the next step is having some sort of a storage and pressurizing system on the east side of the river. Would you agree with that?
I think so, Mr. Carey. Like generally, yes. And so what the parts that where it makes a difference is who comes, like who needs it. Would the city want to do one thing first, or would the city want to do another? Like what's the city's priorities, right? In terms of specificity, and who is the need, right? If a developer, like I said, comes in over by the airport, he's really hot to go, and so then maybe you might do that first. Sure. But he's going to spend the money, right? If he says that he's okay with that.
But that airport well was expensive to bring it online.
Yeah, the airport well has no storage, no booster pump capacity at all currently.
It's a hole in the ground, and it takes major renovations to bring that one up.
I see.
It's pumping 1,900 gallons a minute.
We do believe it's a very productive well. We think the Medina Valley well is the Medina Valley well is very strong too.
Irrigation is nothing.
Right, it needs storage.
No, it needs a new pump too. The pump's no good.
So like to be clear, like so the pump. We're going to try to get out there Thursday if it works out. We're going to go do a pump test, try to see there's not data on what that well pump is. We think it's a high volume, low head pump, which makes sense based on its proposed use, so it can't pump into the pressure plane.
I understand.
But so if you put a storage and a booster pump station on, then we think it would work there.
Change it out. $1.5 million to change it out.
They told me to upgrade that system.
Is it municipal water, or is it all?
It's municipal water. That's an approved public water supply well. So the $1.5 million number, that's a quote from like the old study that the previous engineers did, but it was like a big ground storage tank and a big booster pump station. It's not just that well pump itself.
How big of a hole is in the ground there?
24.
I don't remember. It's big.
Do you know how big that casing is? What do you think it is?
I think it was a 24. Might have been bigger.
Yeah, I'd do more than 1,900 if it was.
That's a good sized hole.
It was drilled by the military. Okay.
We need to give this gentleman some direction what we would like.
And Mayor, it's a lot to process. It may be worth, if you have some thoughts you want to share them, it might be more productive. Because what I wanted to do for the study, right, is that it needs to be wrapped up. We need to finish it up, so at least we have a baseline. We can always come back and revisit it, but it's sort of, it's a planning exercise, right? So we can play what if until the cows come home, we spend a lot of money, and we don't really make it more accurate, right? I want to be careful not to put too many decimal points on something that's sort of forward-looking, so I'm kind of, I would encourage, if you have any thoughts or something like that, we're going to, and maybe when we put all the projects together, maybe that's when the feedback comes, because we can here's the list of projects, and council can weigh in on some of their priorities or what you think would go there, maybe, because it's a lot to ask to get feedback right at this exact moment, to be honest.
Jesse.
Well, I think, I think our priority, excuse me, should be get that looping in place and get that well number 1 replaced. Those two things I think are the priorities.
I agree.
I think we should have a capital improvement plan put into the budget for replacing well number 1, so that when it happens, we've at least got a plan and we know what it's going to cost and how long it's going to take.
I got that note.
So rework Medina Valley well and do the looping. That was something we could afford. We have the funds available in the Water Development Board money. we still have funds available to do that.
That would take care of what we know of is out there, correct?
Yes. Yes.
Mayor, what is the goal of this? Where did he get the direction to do it, and what is the goal? Because I didn't know about it, honestly.
Didn't know about what?
This project for looping. I understood we were doing looping, but specifically this, I understand you said is redundancy for Country Village. Is that what it is for?
It gives them pressure, yeah.
And that's the reason we're doing it. That's the reason it came up.
And it helps in the other, Mike?
Yeah, if I could interject. So this started up back in summer of 2017 or tail end of 2017. There was a lot of, the city was getting a lot of, so city planning was getting a lot of requests from developers about potential projects out there, and that was a key piece of a key piece of the effort is what does the city need to have take place over there, right? The developers need to put in what the city needs to have take place, but the developers from the city need to know what is it we're required to do, right? It's tough to, because what you want to avoid, in my opinion, is you want to avoid each developer kind of doing his own thing inside your CCN, and then you're left with 10 little mini water systems that have one well apiece, one little set of booster pumps. They all break on their own. None of them are really up to what a municipality needs in terms of three-phase power, adequate access, adequate lighting for nighttime, all those kinds of things that a municipality needs because you're a 24/7 operation that developers don't. It's not a knock against them, it's just they have a different mindset about these things. And so that was part of the genesis of this exercise was what do we tell these developers that the city needs over there?
And so this is not annexed property. So essentially, this discussion could be a negotiation to annex, to get people to annex in, because if they have to do too much stuff, they're not going to want to come in. Unless we do some sort of like, we'll relax that bit if you do this bit. I don't understand your scenarios. That's what I'm saying. I don't.
Yeah, so to be clear, so we didn't, this is purely infrastructure based. There was no financing in terms of yet. I mean, we're going to price things, but it's just this is what it costs. The prioritization is sort of depends on the city, and then it also depends on who comes in when. Like if a developer comes out in the middle of nowhere, how do you get water to them? They may ask, I know you had wanted to upgrade that. What if we built you a new well and a new facility right here? Would you be okay with that? And the city could then make a determination about it. The scenarios, though, in terms of the growth are just based on if this area is, all these people are knocking on the door asking for growth, they're going to have to get approval from the city for their plats have to get approved and all of their lot densities all comes in front of planning and zoning. So this was an exercise just to start heading in a direction.
Size lot according to our ordinances?
It's somewhere in that middle. It's more based on we just took what the developers had said they wanted to do, right? And so I think it's a little more conservative than it wasn't stripped all the way down to everybody's got to have a 12,000 square foot lot.
Okay.
Jesse?
I still think it's imperative that we get the looping in for the main reason. Those of, if I'm not wrong, the Medina Valley and the airport well, they're sitting there by themselves. If we have well 2 or 3 go down, we're in real trouble. Whereas if we had that looped in, we'd be in trouble, but we would not be in the amount of trouble because we'd be able to get some pressure and some water from the Medina Valley, or the Medina Valley system and the airport system. So that's why I think that they're imperative that we get that looping done. That's the primary thing, in my opinion, is to get that done so it gives some backup to this side of the river, and we're giving, if we have a problem. Then I think the number one well, wherever we place it, we need to put, and that's second, to get more backup that we would need in case of an emergency. Because if we have well 2 or 3 go down and we have a fire in town, we're going to have problems. If I'm not wrong, correct?
I don't want to. So I would just say I didn't look at it from that perspective. I think you do have a good amount of stores at Top Hill, but we didn't go in looking specifically if there was a fire in the city. So I just want to, just so you're clear, I don't know all the specifics of that though.
If you have the backup, if you have the looped in from Medina Valley and the airport, that just gives you more water availability, correct?
Yes, with the caveat, I will make sure you caught up on that part of the discussion, right? That you're talking about you need storage and booster pumps and the piping that's adequate to get it from the east to the west. And that's sort of that decision about how big a belt and how how strong a pair of suspenders does the city want in terms of, because there's benefits and costs to that, right? So it may not be something it might be a 5-year project to do all that work from a financial perspective.
Well, I have a feeling right now the suspenders may not be that big, but if it's your house, I have a feeling you want the suspender pretty big.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not saying no, just to be clear.
If we have a house go down and then because we haven't done this, it moves to another house and to another house, all of a sudden those suspenders that we didn't want to buy, all of a sudden they look like a bargain.
Agreed.
I got a question.
Okay.
Are we not, isn't the city of Castroville tied to Medina Valley ISD water system?
No. Well, we are, but it's closed.
Yeah, so I talked to...
It can be, we can supply them water, and if they get in a bind, is that not vice versa?
I think it is. So I talked to Toby Kennedy a little bit about the system over there.
Yeah.
And I think there's an interconnect there, as I understand it. I want to say, in talking, and this, we just didn't get in far in the exercise, right? I think the elevated tank there's a little bit lower than if I remember correctly. I thought it was a little bit lower, maybe not quite the same pressure plane as what the rest of what the central system is, but it might still work if there was a predicament, and it could be if you're really talking big. What about a conversation? They have a well there, they have elevated storage. Can it be made to work and incorporated and become one water system? That could be a dialogue point for sure.
Well, I know that tower is 168 foot. I don't know what the capacity is.
Yeah, I have it written down somewhere from talking about it. I don't remember the numbers.
You asked, you didn't know where this came from, Phyllis, about the east side looping?
No, sir, that's not what I meant. I meant it doesn't seem to me like the goal of this was to provide redundancy and pressure to Country Village. I think there's other things in play which I'd just like to know, and then we can make informed decisions and talk about something that is effective and important. Like, this is like, chasing I don't know what.
I thought this was all started from Noel Maxwell and what he could potentially...
That's what I thought it was.
It is, but it's always been part of the goal.
So to be clear,
he was going to pay his share for the pipe.
Yeah. To be clear, from a timeline perspective, though, this started before Niall Maxwell. This started in 2017. This has been around a while and actually got put on the shelf because of other things that are going on. But it didn't start.
It was in our budget 2 years ago.
From what I understand.
Yeah. And there's been some studies. So I brought it up to Ms. Gellis when she was here because a study had been done in 2012, but it was sort of. What it said was you need 1 million gallons of storage here and a giant elevated tank. And that's sort of true, but how do you get there, right? Because the city of this size, if you put in a 1 million gallon storage tank, all that water is going to turn bad on you. You're going to have to dump a lot of it on the ground because you lost your disinfectant residual. It doesn't make sense. There was no roadmap to get from it, and there was no piping network. So again, if we need a really big storage, how do we get the water from this facility to someone up here? So that was that. These developers are coming in. The city needs to make sure that when they put in infrastructure, that it's what the city needs, so you don't end up with a lot. And I really recommended that piece there. I think there's some added benefits and we started looking as it went through. Since we're doing these upgrades, could we do something to help with pressure losses west of the river? We think we get to Country Village very comfortably. Getting west of the river is not an easy thing. So how could we get there?
My concern is paying for it. We cannot raise utility rates again to pay for this stuff. We've got how much in debt now? $1,000 a month? How much? Oh, what is it?
Yeah, so again, the idea, right, this becomes information that gets fed into the financial plan, and then based on the city's priorities, this is what we want to do or not do, right? The city can make informed decisions about where the money should go, and this is not intended to, and that's why I didn't put any pricing here, because it's not intended that I would ask you to vote on, we should do this activity or this activity, but to inform you this is what the existing conditions are and what would help to provide reliability, redundancy, and the needed service for additional capacity.
So, go ahead.
Do we have a number for how much the looping and the upgrade would be?
No, but I want to make a suggestion that we ask them to bring that back to us. and the cost for the well number 1, so we know what we're looking at and have it ready for the budget.
We could do, so just to be, so looping is, that's a big general term, and I'm gonna get real specific.
The pump upgrade.
I'm gonna get real specific. So, in order to really, so we're really clear, we can, if we do a well upgrade here and a small booster pump in the existing pump station, we can improve things here short term. You know, by that I mean for what's coming there right now, this moment. In order to really move a considerable amount of water or move more water to the west, and that's the part I was just trying to, for some clarity, how much water do you want to move west? You want to sort of take care of the whole east side from the Medina Valley system, or you just want to, whatever's left over gets moved back towards Country Village? And I say this because it will help. I just want to know, like, how much help are you looking for, right? Because it's a number.
Yeah, you probably need to bring us a scale.
Yeah, you put me on the spot there.
Yeah, I don't have those numbers on top of my head.
Okay, I'll come up with something, and we can have a conversation about it then.
I live in Country Village, and I don't have a pressure issue. Never have. Now, it may be on the opposite end of Country Village, you know, I don't know, but I'm kind of in the middle of it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, what we see, Mr. Sherrod, is like when there's a fire event or we're filling the storage tank on Walmart or really large demands on the system, we see the pressures drop in the air. That's the kind of the piece we're talking about. That's what we see.
Has that throughout the city.
Yeah.
We do.
You could suck somebody through a commode.
Yep.
That's what they always used to tell me at the fire department. You gotta be careful how much you're pulling.
That's true.
Out of the fire hydrant.
Okay.
It's true. That's what they told us at the assisted living too. You suck it dry.
I think that's something you just gotta deal with.
So we were pointing out the loop, east and west loop on the south side of the highway off of the Medina Valley system to close that circle, because having a full circle gives you good pressure throughout, equal pressure throughout the loop. So I would think that's what we're talking about when we're talking about the looping. Now, the long-term, the large-scale looping is tying all the systems together. That's going to be way down the road.
Yeah, I'm understanding. We're just trying to get across Highway 90 and connect to the existing 10-inch and then complete the loop and then to the well. Sure.
So that the units are actually connected to each other. So.
And because all them things were dead ends, correct?
Correct. Okay. Did we beat this horse enough?
I think you've got the next step.
I'm good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Going on to item number 10, discussion and appropriate action on a contract between the City of Castroville and Corp Jet Aviation LLC for a corporate jet maintenance facility located at the municipal airport. It was tabled on 3/12/2019. Mike Fisher.
Mr. Fisher.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff. I came to you on the 12th of March, and negotiations were still ongoing with Corp Jet Aviation. We were not ready to move forward at that time. You did table it. I'm here today to give you some updates and ask you to take some action. First of all, the negotiations with Corp Jet Aviation, I guess to put it in aviation terms, went into an uncontrollable, unrecoverable tailspin.
I like that.
There were several sticking points with the negotiations between the potential client and myself. Our baseline lease agreement required some documents from the state of Texas. Specifically, it required a certificate of formation of the company certified by the Secretary of State, the certificate of existence of the company issued by the Secretary of State, and the certificate of franchise tax account status issued by the Texas Comptroller. None of those were submitted. I made no headway in getting those documents from the potential tenant. Additionally, they balked in a major way at our insurance requirements. I interfaced with our city attorney to make sure I had a good understanding of what our insurance requirements are. When I communicated those to the potential tenant, they declined to insure themselves for workman's compensation. They did not agree to bring on broad commercial general liability aviation insurance to cover independent contractors and consultants for personal injury. They were not willing to take out property insurance for the leased structure that they were going to be in. Our lease requires that a tenant there is insured for 100% replacement value of that hangar if they burn it to the ground. They were unwilling to do that. We went back and forth on those issues. They balked repeatedly. Finally, I went to the tenant and told them those are non-negotiable items. I must have your agreement on those items before we move forward. At this point, the corp jet said, well, I'm going to bring my lawyers in and we'll hash it out that way. I terminated the conversation with them, told them I would get back with them. I went back to the city attorney, told them that based on everything that happened, I did not think this was a tenant that I wanted to proceed forward with putting into our airport, and that because we were under no obligation, because we were still at the negotiation phase, was I within my rights to just break it off and say, we don't want to do this anymore? She said, absolutely. City is under no obligation to that prospective tenant in any way. You may trash that any way you see fit. I had them provide that to me in writing from the city attorney's office. When I got that, I contacted the prospective tenant and wished them well and told them that we were no longer interested in any kind of business arrangement with Corp Jet Aviation. I'm a master chief. I don't push easy. When someone starts threatening legal actions before we even have a business relationship, that's a bad omen to me, and that's not a position I want to put the airport or the city in. And I think had I gone forward with those kind of negotiations, I would be neglecting my duty as the airport manager by doing something I knew wasn't right. So I guess what I would like for you today, I'm going to ask you, I think you have to bring it back to the table because you tabled it, and I would like for y'all to bring it back up and formally kill that.
We can do that.
Okay, sir. And I'm prepared to answer any questions.
I so move we kill it.
I second the motion to fire the client.
We have a motion and a second.
Don't you have to bring it back first? Take it off the table?
We can, all right, can we have a motion to bring it back off the table?
So move.
Second.
Motion, do I have a second?
Then second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Now you can make your motion to deny the proposed lease agreement for Corporate Jet Aviation LLC establishing a corporate jet maintenance facility at the Castroville Municipal Airport, if that's what you so choose.
I move that.
Okay.
And second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Discussion and appropriate action on approving a contract between the City of Castroville and Medina Valley Independent School District to have a common polling place as required by Chapter 271 of the Texas Election Code for the May 4th, 2019 general election.
Yes, Council, this is an annual contract. We are required by the state to have one with the school if they are hosting a election at the same time we are. So this is really just a mandatory contract.
Can I have a motion to approve the agreement with the Medina Valley Independent School District for the May 4th, 2019 general election?
So moved.
I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion and appropriate action on adopting an ordinance declaring unopposed candidate for District 2 Council seat elected to office.
This is also, well, it's not annual, but if you have a person that is not, is unopposed, we can cancel that seat. I did take note that Mr. Terry, his middle name has one R in it, and I will change it before we sign the ordinance. I will also post this ordinance at the election, on election day, so that everyone will see that it is canceled.
Can I have a motion declaring an ordinance unopposed candidate for elected office for District 2?
I move we approve the ordinance as corrected.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Thank you.
Item number 13, discussion, update, and possible action on the street program.
Thank you, Mayor. Staff has been working with All-in-One, who's the contractor that did our streets last fiscal cycle, and we have not received a proposal with updated pricing for this. What you have at your die this evening are the remaining streets that were left from the street program that we have done that are budgeted for fiscal year 19. Staff has been waiting to get those updated bids for them. Part of the challenge that we're running into, petroleum prices are going up, materials are difficult to get right now, and the contractor has been in the Metroplex. Roy has recently spoken with the individual from All-in-One Contracting, and they are wanting to do our streets. He will be giving us updated proposals for that. And what's before you tonight would be the streets that were actually in this year's fiscal year budget to look at.
Okay. Any discussion?
Is this the same contractor that we had last cycle?
Yes, sir.
I've got a question.
Yes, sir.
During the last year when we did this, there was a lot of lessons learned. Have we put changes into the contract to make sure we don't repeat the same mistakes that we made during last year's contract?
What were the mistakes?
I don't remember. There was a bunch of them.
Tell you one of them.
There were a lot of them.
Yeah.
We had to actually stop work for a couple of days, and I just remember there was a great deal of consternation. It was all resolved satisfactorily because all the streets were accepted, but I just would like to not have to relive those same problems again.
I think one of the answers is not do it in the middle of August when it's 100 degrees out. Jerry?
Yes, since I was interim at that time, yes, lessons learned. We will have, part of the big problem was staff at that time didn't get out in front of it and do their part adequately. So we've instructed staff that they will be going out ahead and doing the potholes and take care of prepping it prior to it, and following up on them. I think those were the two major issues that caused the problem, and also staying on top of the size of the rock going into it. So staff is, I think, on top of it this time.
The only other issue that I remember was some residents' vehicles were left in the street at
Yes, sir,
the time of
that's-
paving, and we had some tar contamination with those vehicles, so.
Yes.
Some of them were even damaged.
Damaged, yeah.
Yeah. Staff has been instructed to stay in front of them and behind them.
Mayor, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the actual contract that we did was for 100% of the streets?
It was for in the contract, it was these streets, and it was for up to that, as many that could be accomplished with the amount of money. And as I recall, we still have, now we're going to have to get council's approval. We'll have to come back, well, I don't know if we have to come back or not to do that, because we're in another year. And I believe we still have about 48,000 on the left on that contract. So the majority of these could be done under that.
Wasn't it 400,000?
Yes.
So we spent 350,000?
Yes, I do believe that is correct. That's the number that does stick in my mind, yes.
And as you said, lessons learned were that they need to be fixed before we do the seal coat. So how many of those streets that have already been done weren't fixed before the seal coat?
I can't say that. I don't know.
So the cost of fixing these streets in River Bluff, do we know how much that's going to cost? Because our streets are horrible. They're splitting.
Isn't this River Bluff? Isn't this River Bluff?
These are River Bluff.
Yes, these are River Bluff.
Yeah,
It's not going to be this simple.
Yeah, no, it's not. Well,
Yeah.
okay, so that would be for the Public Works. From what I understand, these are the remaining streets in that program. So anything other than that, I don't have any knowledge of.
So we did pay them $350,000.
We paid them for the work that they did.
And it was checked off, done well, finished. All right.
Todd?
believe that some, and I guess to Roy too, a couple of the biggest issues that I saw in Country Village were, and I read the contract, and the contract said that they were supposed to pick up the debris. They ended up picking it up, but they swept it in our yards with a giant sweeper before they picked it up. The contract said that they weren't supposed to do that.
Okay.
That was a big issue in my neighborhood. And also, golly, I forgot the other one now. That was the biggie right there.
Notifying the citizens when they were going to do it.
That was another thing that the city or the contractor, I think, was required to do and failed to do. There was no notification. He showed up the day of or a day before. So there were some people that they actually seal coated around their cars in the street. I mean, they just left voids in the seal coat, and then they come back and they did it again. You know, they seal coated them voids, but you and I know that it would be much better done if it was done in one pass or two passes, whatever it takes, 3 passes. So there was, and all of those things were, I read them in the contract and they were there. They just failed to follow through on them. So if I could interject anything, that would be it. Country Village Path, to this day, there's still a few lumps in the road, like some seal coat or some tar dripped and kind of made a little pile. But other than that, it really is horrifying. As it looked like it was going to be, it turned out fairly well.
Okay.
So.
Okay. But in what the management side from the Public Works, as Jerry was saying, we learned, we'll get ahead of that curve on this process and make sure that. Yes, sir.
So, question, Mayor, last one. So what do you want us to do? We need to give you the okay, and you're going to give us a price?
If we could give an okay for the streets, one thing Jerry and I were discussing before the meeting is, if we're looking at the total was $55,500 last year, is maybe if you could staff up to, say, even I would say up to maybe $70,000 possibly, depending on the prices, because part of the challenge that we're running into is oil prices are going up right now. When we get the bids, they're going to be going up. What we get into, and as the mayor was discussing, if we get into August and later in the cycle and it warms up, one, it's going to be difficult to get the contractor to come on board. The other, prices could keep increasing and the temperatures increase and the quality could go down with some of this. And so it's a tough spot. There's a lot of road work, a lot of materials. As Jerry and I were dealing with Mexico Street today, it's challenging to get the materials right now. And so although we now have the exact cost right now, we've got a pretty good idea of where we are, but I would recommend if you could staff an extra 20%, maybe 20,000, whatever, to go up to when the actual bid does come in, that would help us do it and move forward with this project.
Yeah, but this is just last year. We have another budgeted item for streets this year. We need to lump those in so that we get a good price for doing more volume. This isn't even on the new budget.
If we decide to do that, we have to bid it.
You have to bid it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we could just complete the project, I mean, we're asking to complete the project, then we can move forward with the next.
We need to be doing it.
So we don't have to bid this here?
No.
Part of contract.
But what about our city is going to have to repair River Bluff streets? They're horrible. Are you going to put that in the contract, give us that estimate of that cost for our work?
No, the city will patch them.
You mean
Sorry?
prep work?
I know, but it's a lot of work. So will they be able to give us an amount? We don't have the staff, so what's going to happen? It's a lot of work. Ask Roy, it's a lot of work in that city. Those streets, they're horrible.
Roy, you got enough help to prep?
Well, you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
So, and for the repairs, you're pretty aware of how much material and what type of repairs we'll do on the type of soil?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And can you give us an amount, maybe some kind of monetary?
Can you get a figure on that? No.
Yeah. No. Because I know the cul-de-sacs are gone. There aren't any. It's all gravel.
I don't know if we got a figure when they did Country Village or any of the other streets.
They were okay? We don't.
Yeah, but that was part of the problem with the contract, was that the city would needed to be more diligent about doing that. They didn't do it initially, and then they ended up coming in and shoring them up. Yes, but I think with what we learned in the first session that Roy's, sounds like he's got to take care of. But as far as the number, I never heard no number that the city contributed.
They repaired anything?
Yeah, they did the prep work.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. So
let's make I think you're talking about two different things. I'm hearing you think you're going to be rebuilding the streets in River Bluff. It's not going to happen. This is leveling up and filling potholes and then chip sealing. That's all this is.
Yeah, it's very higher level.
And we don't want to, we keep kicking this can down the road and we don't do anything. We did a really good job last year. There was some issues, you know, but we worked through it. But we need to move forward with this and get those street done and get these others. Yes, John?
And is there a warranty expired already on that last year's project? Or for the street that she's mentioning?
We accepted it. Roy went around and they checked everything. All the boxes were checked, right, Roy? They went street to street. We were on him hard to make sure that everything got taken care of. And to Roy's satisfaction, everything was done. Am I right? Okay.
Do we get a warranty for something like that? For
Yes.
a seal coat?
You get a warranty. I don't know what's in the contract, but I mean, he
I don't remember reading that in the contract.
Just get a seal coat.
Yes.
Okay. I just got complaints about London Street.
I'm sorry?
I just got complaints about London Street.
What about it?
With the seal coat. It's in bad shape.
It is what it is. Seal coat is all we can afford.
So
This
seal
is
coat is to preserve them till we
Yes.
can actually fix them.
Yes.
It's a Band-Aid.
And it's a very affordable. It's the only thing we can afford to do here. We can't rebuild streets with the current budget we have. We can do this, and that's all we can do. And that was the idea. It is what it is. I think that River Bluff would get great benefit out of us leveling up what we can and seal coating. I think it will stop the water from infiltrating. Am I right?
Oh, I agree, but I just want you to be aware of the cost of fixing those things. They told me it was prohibitive.
Who told you?
The last public works person said those streets are so bad that it's going to take a considerable amount of fixing.
You just want to skip River Bluff and go on to the rest of the city?
Not.
We can do
But I
that.
want you to understand the cost and include the possibility of just the minimum fixing.
Roy, are you comfortable, and I don't want to skip over you, John, but he's been working on this. Are you comfortable you can fill the potholes and level up where we need to in River Bluff and get this prepared for this project?
Yes.
Okay, he's telling us he can do it. I don't want to second judge. This is a man that does the work.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
To Lee, the 55,000. This is not a bid or an estimate.
My understanding, Roy, correct me if I'm wrong, this was what was from last year, correct?
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Those prices aren't any good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That answers my question.
Right.
That answers my question.
That's what I was asking for, is
No, that
if, you
answers my
know, this is kind of a base, it will be above this
So
because.
you're asking for a motion to give you up not to exceed 75,000 to get these streets seal coated?
Yes, sir, I think that would be a good range to help us with.
Can we have that motion?
I move we approve an amount not to exceed $75,000 to complete the seal coating of the streets listed on this handout that you gave us today. They're all in River Bluff.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We have that. And can we come back with, can we start the bid process for the rest of it?
We will begin the process.
Bring it back to us. Discussion appropriate action on a service agreement for planning services with Freeze Nichols. This was tabled on 3/26/2019, and we needed to bring it back, they told me, at this meeting. So do we have any new information?
No new information. After our discussion on Thursday, my understanding that this was not going to move forward. And so what staff has done since last Thursday is we're beginning to look at, some different options to help with planning services. part of the challenge is there's not firms out there that help with day-to-day type questions with development. There are firms that do comprehensive plans, that do big things like that in the ordinances that implement them. But as far as day-to-day questions with developers or those types of things or staff, they're not available. And so with the issues that were with Freeze and Nichols, it seemed like with the council and the discussion with the mayor, we're looking at probably to try to revise, the job description, those types of things, and looking for services to help with the planning process. One thing that helps coming on board, having John helping in now in Public Works, is giving me a little more time to be able to work on that plan and hopefully get it together. But for full disclosure, part of the challenge is keeping up, as previous Mayor Lee had mentioned, is there's a lot of development going on, a lot of discussion, and the sooner we can get that position filled or some assistance, it helps us and it helps the development community.
Okay. Can I have a motion to access?
Do we got to bring it back to the table?
A motion to bring it back to the table.
Move we bring this discussion on offering or agreeing for planning services from Freeze and Nichols back to the table.
Have a motion.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Oh, it's not going to be anything.
Motion carries.
Yep.
Now I need a motion to...
I move that we deny any options to agree with hiring planning services from Freeze and Nichols.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Motion carries. Item number 15, discussion on future agenda items. Herb, do you have any?
Yes, I have the same two that I brought up at the last meeting that we didn't get on tonight's agenda.
When we have, all right, let me make this perfectly clear. When we discuss future agenda items, it doesn't mean that they're going on the next agenda. We have them on the list and they're going to gather information, but that doesn't mean they're going to make it onto the next agenda. But we have them down that we're going to do it. But Jerry tells me they just don't have the time right now to put some of these on there because we don't have the background material. So just have a little patience with these people. Just because we say we want them, they don't make it to the next agenda.
6 months have passed.
Okay.
I just want to go and review what we've learned over the last 6 months, that's all.
So noted.
And so what are you saying, that we shouldn't bring them up a second time?
I'm just relaying what staff is telling me.
Okay, well, can I ask the question, when should I expect to see these put on an agenda?
Jerry,
these
you
two
want to
items?
address that?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Dyer, with all due respect, we just don't have the staff right now. This is going to take time for me specifically, and right now I'm having to do payroll. That's where we are on staff. So we are working on it. I promise you, I assure we were working on it. We work on it. We work on specifically the RV park. I get updates on a weekly, if not daily basis of where we are, but we just are not at a point to where we can bring it back to you.
Just like like 3 months, should I bring it up again if it's not been done? Is that a reasonable amount of time?
I hope so. Okay. I would hope we have it done by then. If we can just get staffed, somebody to help do these every day. I can't even find time to post the HR position.
I'm not disputing that. And on the solar policy, would you like me just to wait a couple of months to bring it up?
That one's going to be much more difficult because we're going to have to get some help with that for some expertise. So I
3 more months.
would respectfully like to ask Councilmember Dyer if he would help with that because he's always very helpful in this area.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, moving on to item 16. Can we adjourn? Motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Okay, we're going to adjourn at 7:40 p.m. Thank you, everybody.
I guess so.
You too, sir.
Absolutely.